Yeah. Hi guys, good evening. In the last session, we started discussion related to start class in the Spring Boot. So what is start class in the Spring Boot? Yes, start class is called as main class in the Spring Boot. That start class is called as entry point for boot application execution. Right? In this start class, if you observe, there is a main method available and we are having one annotation also. This annotation is @Spring Boot application. If you see the source code of that annotation, that one annotation is equal to 3 annotations here. One is a configuration, second one auto configuration, and third one component scanning. Then after we have seen run method. Run method is entry point for our boot application execution. This run method is doing lot of activities internally, right? So what are the activities doing by this run method? We have seen the internal code of the run method. This run method is creating bootstrap context object. It is starting the listeners which are required. It is starting the initializers which are required. It is preparing the environment which is required to run our project. It is printing the banner and it is creating IOC container and it is calling runners also. Now here, what is a banner? Come on guys. What is a banner? The logo which is printing on the console is called as banner. For the banner, there are 3 types of modes available. First one is console, second one is log, third one is off. If I don't set any mode, then default will be console, banner will print on the console. If you want, you can off the mode. By using this, you can stop the banner and you can customize that banner text also. Then after, we have seen how IOC container is starting in the Spring Boot. So in the Spring, programmer is starting IOC container, whereas in the Spring Boot, run method is starting the IOC container. Which class it is using to start the IOC? Right, it depends upon the starter we are adding in the pom.xml. If you have boot starter, it will use this class to start the IOC. If you have web starter, then it will use this class to start the IOC. Remembering this class name is also difficult, right? And if you have webplex starter, then it is using this class to start the IOC container. Then let's understand what is runner in the Spring Boot. What is runner in Spring Boot? Right. Runners will be called by run method. When we are executing our boot application, run method will be called. As part of the run method, at the last, they are calling the runners. Now, for example, let us take a scenario. I have my application and here I'm having a database. My application want to get the data from database. In the database, there are 2 types of tables available. One is called as transactional table and the second one is non-transactional table. Transactional table is available and non-transactional tables are available. What is the difference between transactional tables and non-transactional tables? Right. Here, if our application is performing insert, update, create, recreate, insert, update, and delete. So if we are performing any DML operation on the table, if our application is performing any DML operation, that means application can insert a record, application can update the record, can delete the record. If our application is performing such kind of operations on the table, that table is called as transactional table. If our application is performing only select operation, then that table is called as non-transactional table. For example, if you go for country details. So country details will modify every day. Are there static? Country details are static. So now application will only read the data from this table. Application will not modify the data in this table. So our application will perform only read operation on this table. So any table data which is not modifying by the application, that table is called as non-transactional table. Non-transactional tables are also called as static tables. Getting my point, guys? Now in the database, we are creating the tables. Tables we are classifying into two types: transactional tables and non-transactional table. What is the difference between transactional tables and non-transactional tables? For the tables which are getting modified, the data which is getting modified in the table by our application, then the table is called as transactional table. The table's data which is not modifying by our application, that is called non-transactional table. Now, if I execute the query 1000 times on the static table, data will be same. So when the data is same, why to execute the query 1000 times? So when my application is started, I want to get the data from the database and I want to store into my application only. When my application needs the data, I will give from the memory itself, no need to go for the database. Now when we have such a kind of static tables in the database, here I will create one runner. In my application, I will create one runner. In my application, I will create one runner. Inside this runner, I will write the logic to connect with the database, get the data, and give that data to my application. So this is my logic. Here my logic is available to use the data. To use the data, my logic should not communicate with the database because that data is a static data. I don't want to get that static data every time. I want to get the static data only one time, that too when my application is started. When my project is started, I want to get the data from the database. I want to save within the application. I want to maintain the data within the application. When I want to use the data, I will use it from the application, but not from the database. Why I am not going for database every time? The data is static. If I get the data from database for first time, or if I get 100 times also, data is the same. When the data is the same, why should you execute the query again and again, which will reduce performance of the application? So now, if you have such a kind of requirement in the project, take the data from the database, keep in the application memory only one time, that too when my application is started. For that we can go for runner. Runners will execute only once at the time of application startup. Spring Boot provided runner to execute logic only once when application starts. Right? Once your application is started, component scanning will happen, IOC container will start, objects will be created, banner will be printed. Once all the processing is completed, at the end of the run method, runners will be called. Once runners are executed, IOC container object will be returned by the run method. Now, Spring Boot provided runner to execute logic only once when application starts. So here we have two types of runners in the Spring Boot. We have two types of runners in Spring Boot. What are those two types of runners? First one is application runner. First one is called as application runner, and the second one is command line runner. First one is application runner, second one is command line runner. Both are functional interfaces. Both are functional interfaces. What is the meaning of functional interface? Only one method is available. Application runner is having run method, and command line runner is also having run method. So here You can go for either application runner or command line runner. When you have both application runner and command line runner, first priority will be given to application runner, then the next priority will be given to command line runner. So these are functional interfaces. Only one abstract method is available. So when you want to implement your own runner, then you need to implement any one of this interface. I want to create a runner in my project. When my project starts, I want to execute the logic only one time. That logic I can keep inside my runner. In order to create the runner, boot provided two interfaces. You can implement either application runner or you can implement command line runner. What is the meaning of implementing an interface? Overriding the method. What is the method available? Run method. Sir, what is the difference between these two runners? The run method parameter is different. Technically, there is no difference between these two interfaces, guys. Now, the parameters of the methods are different. Okay. Now, let me create my runner. Let me go and create my runner. So here I have a project. Here I'm having a project. This is my start class. This is my start class. Here I'm having report service class available that I represented as a Spring Bean, and report to DAO is available that also I represented as a Spring Bean. Here I'm calling the run method. IOC container will be started. Now let me create one runner. New class my app runner. My app runner. Let me keep this in a separate package called runners package. Click on finish. Now it is a normal Java class. I want to represent this as a runner. Then implements application runner. Implement application runner. Whenever you run this, whenever you implement, you need to override this. Okay. Application arguments we are taking as a parameter. System.out.println app runner executed. App runner run method. Like this. Now, this is a normal Java class now. Let me make it as a Spring Bean. It is a normal Java class. Let's make it as a Spring Bean. Here, to make this normal Java class as a Spring Bean, I'm going for one annotation called component annotation. Right? Next one. Let me run this project. I'm not calling that runner anywhere. I just represented that class as a Spring Bean and it is implementing application runner. Am I calling this method? I'm not calling that method. I'm not calling. Go to my start class, run as Spring Boot application. See the console. Object created for service class, object created for DAO. That means, can I say component scanning happened? After our objects are created, then what happened here? Run method got executed. That is my runner. Who is executing that runner? Run method is executing. When that runner is getting executed, after our application startup is completed. Once our IOC object is created, at the end of the run method, the runner classes are getting executed. Can I create one more runner? Yes, here I have app runner. Now let me go for new class, my CMD runner. My CMD runner. Click on finish. So here I'm using implements command line runner. Now let me make this as a Spring Bean by using component annotation. Then next one, I need to override run method. Okay, same thing. Earlier, if you see, what is the method parameter? What is the method parameter? Application argument. What is the parameter? String arguments are the parameter, source argument. That means whatever the arguments that we are passing to the main method, same arguments we can pass to this command line runner also. Now let me write a method system.out.println. I'm overriding the run method system.out.println. Here I'm writing my CMD runner run method. CMD runner, run method. I have application runner and I'm having CMD runner also. Go to start class, right click, run as boot application. Now can you see here, which runner is executing first? Application runner is executing first, then CMD runner is getting executed. So now tell me, in which scenario we need to go for runners? In which scenario we need to go for runners? Yes, when you want to execute the code only once, then you will go for runners concept. Now some common use cases in the project, in which scenario we are going to use this runners. So the first use case, load the static data into cache from the database. Load static tables data when application starts. That is the major scenario that we can say for the runner. When my project is started, I don't want to interact with the database every time to get the data because it is static data. When my runner is started, when my application is started, my runner will execute. My runner will take the data from the database and it will store into some map object or some memory. When my application needs that data, I will take it from the map instead of from the database. So this is one scenario. And the second one is delete data from staging tables. In the project, so staging tables will be available. Staging tables nothing but temporary tables will be available in the database. When my application started, the data will be loaded to those tables. When the application stopped, I don't need that data. That data is a temporary data. So when there are some temporary tables are available, every time when my application is getting started, I want to clean up that data. So those tables are called as staging tables. So when my application started, I will write the logic in the run method to delete all the records which are available in the staging tables. Are you guys getting my point? Now, third scenario, send a notification regarding application startup. Now, when my application is started, I want to send some notification saying that application started. So I want to give some notification. How many times that runner logic will execute? Runner logic will execute only one time. So these are the common scenarios when we are going to use runners in the project. To load static tables data when application starts. Delete the data from staging tables. Send a notification regarding application startup. So what is a runner and what is the purpose of runner? Spring Boot provided runner to execute logic only once when application starts. How many types of runners are available? There are two types of runners available. One is application runner. Second one is command line runner. These are interfaces. These are classes. These are interfaces. Application runner is one interface. Command line runner is one interface. Both are functional interfaces. What is the meaning of functional interface? Only one abstract method available. Only one abstract method is available. That is run method. You can implement application runner or you can implement command line runner. If I have both runners, first app runner will execute, then CMD runner is going to execute. What is the difference? Parameter. So whatever the arguments we are passing to the main method, command line arguments, the command line arguments will be directly taken by the CMD runner. Application runner will take the arguments in the object format. Right. Use cases. Load static tables data when application starts. Delete data from staging tables. Send a notification regarding application startup. How the runners are getting called, you can see, go to the run method and go to this run method, There is a method called call runners. When you click on the call runners, what they are doing? In our project, how many runners are available? They are loading and they are added to one list object because we can have multiple application runners, multiple CMD runners also, they're added to one array list object. Then they are iterating that if it is belongs to application runner, now they are calling the call runner method. Application arguments they are passing. Whatever the arguments that we are sending to the main method, those arguments they are passing as a object. Suppose if you go for command line runner, whatever the arguments are available, they are directly passing the source arguments for the CMD runner. So runners are calling as part of the run method. Calling the runners is the last step of the run method. Once the runner's execution got completed, this run method is returning context object. What is that context object? Configurable application context. Now, can I store that into a reference variable? Yes, configurable application context. Configurable application context. Configurable application context is equal to. So like this, we are calling our run method. Guys, if I don't call the run method in the project, then what will happen? If I don't call the run method in the project, then what will happen? Right? Banner will not be printed. Environment properties will not be loaded. IOC content will not be created. Runners will not be executed. So now tell me, calling this run method is mandatory. Calling the run method is optional. Calling the run method is mandatory because lot of things are happening internally in this run method. Now, if I don't write this annotation, then what is the problem? If I don't write this annotation, what will happen? Component scanning will not happen. Auto configuration also will not happen. Now, how auto configuration is happening? Here, we are having pom.xml. In the pom.xml, we are configuring some dependencies. These are called starters. These are called starters. Along with these guys, in our project, if you see Maven dependencies, they will download one jar file called Spring Boot Auto Configurer jar will be downloaded. Can you see the jar file which they have downloaded? What is the name of the jar? Spring Boot Auto Configurer jar is available. That means what are some common configurations that are required for the application that will be loaded by Auto Configurer jar. Now, if you go inside Auto Configurer jar, there are so many packages available. In every package, so many .class files will be available. Along with that, at the bottom of that jar, you can see one folder with a name called meta-inf. If you go to meta-inf, there is a file called spring.factories file is available. So which jar file I am exploring? Spring Boot Auto Configurer jar file I am exploring. In that jar file, so many packages available. Every package contains so many .class file. Along with that, there is a folder called meta-inf. In that folder, there is a file called spring.factories. Let me go to the spring.factories file. These are some predefined initializer classes which is Spring Boot is loading. Because of these classes, only we are getting the auto configuration. Whatever the configurations, whatever the settings that are required for our application, Boot is providing. That means Boot people, Spring people developed some classes. In that classes, they have written the logic to provide the configurations which are required. When our application started, these initializers will be loaded. These listeners will be loaded. These post processors will be loaded. These filters will be loaded. These analyzers will be loaded. These templates will be loaded. These data sources will be loaded. Database initialization detectors will be loaded. What these classes will do? Whenever you add JPA starter, one of this listener will listen to the JPA starter, will create the connection pool. One of the listener will listen to that web starter, will start the Tomcat server. Configuration is happening automatically. That means they provided the classes to load that configuration. In the Spring framework, we need to write the configuration. In the Spring Boot, it is automated. What is the meaning of automated? They provided some classes. Where those classes they configured? They configured those classes in a file called spring.factories. Where that file is available? In the meta-inf. In which jar file? Spring Boot auto configure jar file is available. So whenever we create a boot application, by default, auto configure jar file will come. In that jar file, factories file is available. In the factories, the listener classes are available. Now we have seen in the start class, several times I told that in the run method, they are loading the listeners. Here you can see create bootstrap context and run the listeners. What is the meaning of that? From the factories file, they will load the classes which are available and they will create the object and they will call the methods. Those classes are going to load the configuration that is required for our application. Are you getting my point? Yes. Now you got the clarity. What is run method and what is this annotation? Code is just 3 lines, but it took 2 days to understand. Right? What is start class in the Spring Boot? What is happening inside the start class? What is the significance of the start class in the Spring Boot? Perfect. Now here guys, as of now we understood what is Spring Boot. Tell me, what is the Spring Boot? Now, already Spring Framework is available to develop the application. When the Spring Framework is already available, why Spring Boot came into picture? In the Spring Framework, there are so many advantages are there, but the problem is configuration. Every project should have some common configuration. To avoid those common configurations in the Spring projects, Spring people only developed Spring Boot. Spring Boot is extension for the Spring Framework. Whatever we can do by using the Spring Framework, same thing can be done by using Spring Boot also. Spring Boot is one approach. It is not the replacement for the Spring. Every concept which we are using in the boot are coming from the Spring only. We are using the Spring Boot. Boot is internally using the Spring Framework. So we can say Spring Boot is one approach to develop Spring applications with less configurations. And we have seen the differences between Spring and Spring Boot, Spring versus Spring Boot. In the Spring, we need to deploy to the server manually. Okay, guys, we need to start the IOC container manually. We need to perform the component scanning manually. We need to create the configuration classes manually. We need to declare the beans. We need to start the IOC. Some common configurations we have to write as a programmer. Those are resolved in the boot. Now we have seen the advantages with the Spring Boot. What are the advantages we are having with the Spring Boot? The first and foremost advantage is the form starter. They have simplified our Maven configuration, and with that form starter, auto configuration is happening. So now we need to talk about the advantages. Means first one is form starters in the Spring Boot. Dependency configuration is simplified. Based on the dependency, configurations will be provided by Spring Boot. First one is the form starter, and the next one is dependency versions. Now, do I need to configure version for the dependency? Boot is taking care of the version. Boot is taking care of the version. Now, when I add the Lombok, which version of the Lombok is compatible with the Spring Boot? That Lombok version it is going to download. When you add Hibernate, which version of the Hibernate is compatible with the Spring Boot? That version it will download. You no need to identify which Lombok version I should use in the project, which Hibernate version I need to use in the project, which security version I need to use in the project. You no need to apply your brain. You just tell what you want. Boot is going to download that dependency with the compatible version. The dependency version management will be taken care by Spring Boot. And the next one, the most important concept, that is auto configuration. Boot is going to identify what configuration is required for our project, and it will provide that configuration in the runtime of our application. Whenever you run your application based on the starters, it is going to identify what configurations are required for this project. It will provide those configurations in the runtime. That is called auto configuration. Can you tell me some examples related to auto configuration? IOC container starting, component scanning, deploying the project to the server, providing the authentication functionality, creating the connection pooling. These all are common for every project. Those common logics, we no need to write them. The boot is going to provide. The only thing is add the dependency. And the next one, in the Spring Boot, there is a concept called embedded server. What is the meaning of embedded server? So whenever we run a boot web application, Tomcat will come as a default server and our application will be deployed to the Tomcat. In the advanced Java, our people struggled for 2 days to set up the Tomcat server. How to download, how to install, how to configure the user, how to change the port number and all that stuff. But in the boot, is it required? No, it will be taken care by Spring Boot itself. Embedded server is available. Is it providing only Tomcat as an embedded server? Default is the Tomcat. Can I change from Tomcat to other embedded server? We have Jetty and Netty. How to change we can do. We will do it in the pom.xml in the coming classes. Right. And next one, in the boot we are having a concept called actuators. What is the purpose of actuators in the Spring Boot? They are used to monitor and manage our application, checking what is the log level in the project, what is the health of the project, heap dump of the project, thread dump of the project, configuration properties of the project, how many classes loaded by our application. All those things we can monitor by using actuators available in the application. Okay, guys. Next one, after that we discussed what is start class in the Spring Boot. What is start class in Spring Boot? Can you tell me what is the start class in the Spring Boot? Whenever we create a boot application, by default start class will be created with a name called application.java. So can I run the boot application without a start class? No. Start class is mandatory to run the boot application, and start class is the entry point for the boot application. Whether it is standalone, whether it is web application, whether it is a REST API, it doesn't matter. Application has to start from the main class. That is the start class from the main method only. Every Spring Boot application will start from the main method only. So start class we understood. Okay. After that we understood what is @Spring Boot application annotation. What is @Spring Boot application annotation? That one annotation is equal to 3 annotations in the Spring Boot. Boot configuration, enable auto configuration, and component scanning in the Spring Boot. So do you know what is component scanning in the Spring Boot? So here component scanning, do I need to enable or it is inbuilt functionality? In the Spring we have to enable, but in the Spring Boot it is inbuilt functionality. What is the component scanning? Right, it is the process of scanning the Spring Bean classes available in the project. What is base package naming convention in the Spring Boot? What is base package naming convention? What is base package naming convention? In which package your start class will be available, that is called as a base package. The remaining packages should start with the same base package. Here, this problem I faced several times in my previous batches. people will say that, sir, my class object is not creating by Spring Boot. They will give the different package name. One package name and another package name will not have any relation. So when you are not following, especially this problem I have faced in the project batches. So those people will not write the correct package naming convention in the project. One package they will write com.demo. Another package they will write example.demo. So first package, second package, there is no convention. So we need to start all the packages with some base package name. Suppose if you give your base package as com.demo, then what is the meaning of that? All the other packages also should start with the com.demo only. Then only that component scanning will happen. Then only your classes will be scanned. Then only IOC container will create the object for your class. So please remember, package naming convention is very, very, very important in the boot application, right? So which one will be considered as a base package in the Spring Boot? The package which contains the start class. In which package our start class is available, that package will be considered as a base package. The remaining packages in the project should follow the same convention. So every package should be a sub package for the base package. What is the meaning of sub package? It should start with the base package name, then only it is called as a sub package. Now after that, we have seen what is Spring application dot run method, the most important method in the Spring Boot. What is Spring application dot run method? Can you guys tell me? What is the Spring application dot run method? This is the entry point for the boot application. What this method is doing internally? Load initializers, start the listeners, then after print banner, then create IOC object, create IOC container. It is going to start the IOC container and it is going to call the runners, then finally it will return IOC reference. Finally, it is going to return the IOC reference and it will log how much time our application is started. So here, run method is called entry point for the boot application execution. Inside that run method, lot of logic is available, right? We no need to butify, but we need to understand what is happening inside that. Loading the listeners, starting the listeners, printing the banner, creating IOC container, calling the runners, returning the IOC object. Then after, we have seen what is runner in Spring Boot. We understood what is runner in the Spring Boot. What is a runner in the Spring Boot? Come on. If you want to execute any logic only once when the project is started, then I will go for runner. How many types of runners are available? There are two types of runners are available in the project. One is application runner and second one is a command line runner. Right. Next one, how to create boot application. Do you know how to create a boot application? Come on guys, how to create the Spring Boot application? There are two ways to create the boot application. One is by using initializer website. Second one is by using IDE. If I use IDE, internally it will talk to initializer website. Internet connection is mandatory to create the boot application. So this is what we learned so far in the Spring Boot. Everything we are able to revise in 10 minutes. So even if somebody asks you when you are sleeping, you should be able to answer these questions. These are damn important when you are attending the interview. Without asking the questions on the Spring Boot, your interview will not be completed. They may not ask questions on JDBC, Servlet, JSP, but definitely they will ask questions on the Spring Boot, IOC container, dependency injection, bean scope, bean lifecycle, auto wiring, all these questions. Now, if we see what we learned in the Spring, lot of stuff that we learned in the Spring. Right. We have summarized it that what we learnt in the spring. So now, whatever the concepts that we have learnt in the spring, do we need to remember those concepts or we don't need to remember those concepts? Those are spring concepts, right? Do I need to remember these things? IOC container, dependency injection, bean scope, auto wiring, primary, ref, Java bean, how to configure the class as a spring bean, and what is spring bean, how to get the bean object, what are the spring annotations, component scanning, auto wiring, bean life cycle, depends on. All these concepts are applicable in the Spring Boot also. Spring Boot is not a separate framework. Spring Boot is the extension for the Spring. Spring Boot is one approach to develop Spring application with the minimal configuration, with less configurations. Are you clear? Right. Now, how to represent our Java class as a Spring Bean? What are the annotations available? There are annotations like @component available, @service available, @repository available. In future, we are going to get @controller, @rest controller. Okay. In the project, we are going to see these annotations. By using these annotations, we are going to represent our Java class as a Spring Bean. So forget about controller and rest controller. These are related to web MVC module in the Spring. When you are going to develop a web application, now instead of servlet, we will use a controller. Instead of servlet, we will use controller. When you want to develop a web service, then we are going to use REST controller. These topics will come in the Spring Web MVC module. Are you clear? Good. Remove this. Now we are having three annotations: component, service, and repository. What is the purpose of these three? Purpose is the same. Purpose is same. They are used to represent our Java class as a Spring Bean. And all these annotations are class level annotation. You need to specify these annotations at the class level. Along with that, we used @configuration annotation, and we used @bean annotation, and along with that we used @scope annotation. We used @scope annotation, and we used primary annotation, and we used auto wide annotation, and we used qualifier annotation, and we use depends on annotation. Getting my point? Component, service, repository, configuration, bean, scope, primary, auto wide, qualifier, depends on. So do you remember purpose of all these annotations? Yes. What is the purpose of component? It is used to represent our Java class as a Spring Bean. In your project, any Java class which you want to represent as a Spring Bean, then we will go for a annotation called component. This service annotation and repository annotations are also used to represent the class as a Spring Bean. These are family members of the component. Component is a household, the big person in the house. Here, this is service annotation and repository annotations are family members of the component. Sir, when I use a component, or when I use a service, or when I use a repository, am I going to get any extra benefit? What is the difference between component, service, and repository? So technically, only for the repository annotation, some little benefit will be available, but with the component and service, most of the features are almost same. Now, what is the benefit that we are getting with the repository? Let's go to our class. Here DAO is available. What is the annotation I'm using? @repository. So here, this component annotation, service annotation, repository annotation, These annotations are called as stereotype annotations. They gave the name as a stereotype annotation. You can see that in the package name itself. What is that? Stereotype. If you go for service, what is that? Stereotype annotation. If you go for component, what is that? Stereotype. Component, service, repository, these annotations are called as stereotype annotations. They are used to represent our class as a Spring Bean. Let us see the documentation related to component, service, repository to understand differences between those three annotations. Now, first I am going with the repository annotation. Let me open repository annotation. At the rate interface, it is a annotation. Now, from which version it is available? From 2.0. Can you please read this? Can you please read that, please? Please read the documentation. What Spring people are telling about the repository. Guys, in the hibernate, relationships are going on. They are very important. You have to practice each and every example related to database relationships. One to one, one to many, many to one, many to many. Unidirectional, bidirectional relationships will be available. In the interview, damn sure they will ask a question on the relationship. I see only 7 to 8 people are coming to hibernate offline class. Huh? 14. Today morning 14 members came. Actually for offline, the strength is 78 people for the module 3. Only 7-8 people are coming to the offline. Tomorrow if you come and ask me, sir, please help me to get the job, I will say no. Because you are not coming to the classes regularly. I am not responsible for your job. Are you getting my point? If you come to the class regularly, if you listen to the, when we are asking to attend the classes in the online, you will say that we want offline. When we are conducting the class in the offline, you are not coming to the class. What is the use of that? Tomorrow, how I will support you to get the job? Simply, I will say one thing. How many classes you attended in the offline? I will take the report. Only 7 people, 8 people came to the class. Remaining people are not coming. They are not practicing. I don't know whether they are practicing or not. Tomorrow, after course is completed, you will come and ask me, sir, where is my job? Then do you think that I have a software company to give you the job? I'm also an employee like you. Why are you not coming to the class in the morning? What is the use? What is the benefit of conducting that offline class? Faculty coming from 10 to 15 kilometers early morning to take that class. You people are not coming. You are staying in the Amirpet. All of you. Except 5 to 6 people. They are coming from long. Then why you are asking for offline? At that time, I asked you, can you attend hibernate in the online? No, we want offline only, sir. We paid for offline. Then why are you not coming to that offline class? Should I ask him to stop the offline? Why he has to come from 15 kilometers early morning when you are not coming to the class? They're taking the photograph. How many people are coming to the offline class for the hibernate? I have that photograph. Tomorrow, only for those people, I am responsible for the job. For the remaining people, I am not responsible for your job. After course completed, tata, bye-bye. Why you people joined for this? We are conducting offline class. Why are you not coming to that? Where is that Biswajit? Daily 20 times he will message, sir, my job, my job. He's not coming to the class. What is the use when you are not coming to the classes? Why are you not coming? Today, how many people came for offline hibernate? What about the remaining people? What about the remaining people? Why are you not coming? What is the problem? I want to know the problem. First of all, I need to understand why you people are not coming for that. So 1-2 days, that is accepted. Yeah, that's fine. What about the remaining? What about the remaining people? Everybody will have a reason. Tomorrow I will also tell you a reason. When you ask for the job, will you accept it? Today you will tell some reason. Sir, I have some other issue. I have some other problem. Whatever it may be, some people may have the real, genuine reason. Some people will kahani banate hai. Tomorrow when you come and ask me, sir, I am not getting the job. If I tell some reason, there is no openings in the company, then will you accept it? Are you okay for that? If you are okay, then I am okay for this. Yesterday, I think 7 people came for the offline class hibernate. Today, 14 people. I got the report, 9 people came for the hibernate offline class. Do you think that you are very great in the Java? Do you think that you know everything in the Java? You are not serious. I mean, we will have some interest to teach the classes. When you guys are not supporting, when you guys are not cooperating, we will lose that interest to take that class, right? As a faculty, 70 to 80 people should come to the class. 7 to 10 people are coming. Do you think that faculty will have an interest to teach the quality subject? He will lose the interest because people are not interested. Why faculty will have interest? Faculty means he's already having a job. He's getting the salary. Teaching is his part-time. Here also he will get salary. He no need to be responsible. Your batch completed, then he will get one more batch. That is for that faculty or for me also same concept, right? Once this batch is completed, we will go for another batch. We'll get more students. You are the one who is going to lose if you don't attend the classes regularly, if you don't practice. The total problem came with the backup videos. As we are giving the videos, you are taking live. हाँ, बाद में देख सकते हैं. Video है ना? Should I stop the uploading videos? If I stop it, then you will set right. You have seen already in the website. We have clearly differentiated the backup, that Zoom link for online and offline. Backup videos also will separate. For online people, backup videos will go. For offline people, backup videos will not go. That is just a 5 minutes task for me to stop the backup videos. I am giving the backup videos because you will go for some revision. You want to listen if you have some doubts once again. You are not even coming to the class because of that. Online also there are only 35 people. In the online also only 35 people present. Actually, for module 3, 235 is the strength in the online. For module 3, 235 people is the strength. In the offline, 78 people is the strength. So total how many people should attend the class daily? 235 plus 78. 80, assume that. Almost 310 to 320 people should attend the hibernate class. 35 plus 10, 45 people are attending the class. What about the remaining 280 people? Who is responsible for their job tomorrow? Simple. If you want to get the job, you take it seriously. Otherwise, just to finish the course and leave. No problem. We will start another batch. No issue. If you want to get the job, you become serious. You start attending the classes, you practice. If you just want to finish the course, then I will feel very happy because my course will complete. I'm not responsible to give you the job. Course syllabus will be completed. Whatever is there in the document at the end of the course, tick, yes, completed, completed, completed. Guys, from today, I'm very serious for module 3. Backup videos will not be uploaded on daily basis. Videos will be uploaded only weekly once, that too Sunday. If you are interested, you continue. Otherwise, you take your fees, wapas, leave. No problem. Because you will not attend the classes. You will not do the practice. After 2 months, you will come and sit on my head. Sir, where is my job? At that time, I can't give you when you don't have the quality subject. And you have seen, in the 100 people, 5 people or 6 people completed how to get the second highest element in the array. That is your skill. Then how company will recruit you? How can I send you to the company? Where is your effort? Where are you practicing? Where is that interest? Monday there is an exam. Then it will identify how many people really practicing, how many people not practicing. You are not a school kid to teach you daily, right? Please have maturity and work according to that. Because we are in the module 3, maximum 2 months to 2.5 months. Already 15 days completed. 15 days completed. Maximum 2.5 months to 3 months it is going to take to complete my syllabus. I think Hibernate almost finished. In another 1 week it will be completed. JRTP and Spring Boot microservice I am responsible to complete. I will complete it. Angular also I will teach, no problem. Everything course will be completed. After that, Chakka Bhajna. Because you don't know anything. You are not practicing anything. How you will attend the interview? Where is that seriousness? If you have the subject, then only you will clear the interview, then only you will get the job. It is not like we are doing consulting, sending the people to the company directly. Company will have a interview, conduct the interview. If you clear, then only they will select. From tomorrow onwards, from Monday onwards, for 3 offline classes, daily attendance will be available. I will prepare the sheet, every people name. You have to sign before getting into the class. I will see the daily attendance for Hibernate, for JRTP, as well as for Spring Boot. Offline people. In the online, Zoom report will be available. How many people attended the class? How many people not attended the class? Because if they want to attend the class, they need to register in the Zoom. Today Zoom report I can download and I will see how many people attended in the online. For offline, paper attendance will be available. I will tell to admin team, they will take your attendance from Monday for all the 3 classes. Based on your attendance, my response will be there for you once the course is completed. So you decide now. Right. We are trying to understand stereotype annotations. One is component annotation, another one is service, and third one is repository. All these 3 annotations are used to represent Java class as a Spring Bean. So here, when we go for @repository, if I open documentation of this annotation, what they are telling is a class that is annotated with this annotation eligible for data access exception translation. So whenever we are writing a class with a database logic, that means persistence logic. So the class which is communicating with the database, that class is called as a persistence class, or we can call that class as a DAO class. Persistence class or DAO class, we are going to call that. Whenever it is communicating with the database, there is a chance of getting some exception. When the exception occurred, when we use this repository annotation, this annotation having a capability to translate that database exception into persistence exception translator. Whatever the exception we are getting in the database, SQL exception, those SQL exceptions will be translated into our Java side exception. That extra benefit we are going to get when we use the annotation as @repository. Are you guys getting my point? @repository is the annotation which is used to represent our Java class as a Spring Bean. Sir, component annotation also doing the same thing. Repository annotation also doing the same thing. The extra benefit that we are getting with the repository is exception translations will happen. When your class is communicating with the database, there is a chance of getting some database exception. Whatever the database exception occurred, that a database exceptions will be translated into Java exception. That process will not be available in the component. Component is a generic annotation which is used to represent our Java class as a Spring Bean. By using repository also, we can represent our Java class as a Spring Bean. And here, @service is available. So this service also will represent your Java class as a Spring Bean. Let's go to @service. Now, can you read this? Can you read that? Read the documentation. This is also almost similar to component only. But generally, what people will do is, in the project, we are going to use controllers, services, and repositories or DAOs. For DAO classes, we will use @repository annotation. Service classes means we are not going to create the service directly like this. In the real time, service will be created as a interface. For that interface, implementation will be created. We have seen payment gateway. Payment gateway will be available as a interface, and for that, several implementation classes will be available. So credit card payment, debit card payment, and credit card payment, debit card payment, and Sodexo payment will be available. So whenever one interface is having several implementation classes, right? The implementation classes will be available as @service annotation. When we are going to perform auto wiring, are we going to use the class name or we are going to use the interface name here? Are we going to write the class name or we are going to write the interface name here? If I write the class name, then what will happen? That will become tightly coupled. So that's why what we are going to do, we are going to write a interface. Now, IOC has to identify the classes which are implementing that interface. So the classes which are implementing the interfaces, the bean classes, we are going to use @service annotation. When the class is having @service annotation, as part of that component scanning, it will identify this class belongs to this interface. Wherever this interface reference is available, implementation class objects should be injected. That extra benefit we are going to get with the service annotation. Component is there, service is there, repository is there. What is the purpose of all the three? What is the purpose of all the three? They are used to represent Java class as a Spring Bean. What is the difference? They are almost same. Very thin line, minor difference is available among those three annotation. If you go for repository annotation, that will translate your database exceptions into Java exception. That a translation will happen. When you go for service, the implementation classes will be detected in the component scanning. Now, let's go for @component annotation. So @component is the head of the household that is used to represent our Java class as a Spring Bean. Now, @component available. Now, what is this annotation representing? So technically, there is no difference between the service and component. Component also will detect those classes and service also will detect those classes. Only repository is having some additional benefit. And to improve readability in the project, right? The classes which contains the business logic, we will represent them as a service classes by using @service. The classes which are utility classes, generic classes will be available, like sending the email, generate a report. Such kind of classes will be represented as a component. DAO classes will be represented as a repository. So component and service is 99.9%. They are same. Only difference, we are going to differentiate them in the layered architecture. Service layer classes will be using @service annotation. Utility classes will be using @component annotation. DAO layer classes will be using @repository annotation. In future, we are going to get controller annotation as well as REST controller annotation. We are going to use the controller annotation as well as REST controller annotation. In the WebMVC, we are going to understand controller and REST controller annotations. Are you clear? Right. What is the purpose of configuration? To make our Java class as a configuration class. In the Spring, we need to do that. But in the boot, by default, our start class is a configuration class. Because of that, @Spring Boot application annotation, our class is considered as a configuration class. Any bean customizations you want to do, that methods you can write in this class with @bean annotation. What is the purpose of @bean annotation? I don't want IOC container to create the object. I want to customize the object creation. For that, I'm going to use @bean annotation. When I write @bean, who is going to call that method? IOC container is going to call that method. Then what is @scope annotation? How many objects should be created for the bean will be represented by scope. What is the default scope? Singleton. If I want to change, I can change to prototype, request, session. Right. Primary. What is the primary? What is the primary? Primary annotation will represent which bean is eligible for the auto wiring. @auto void. What is the meaning of @auto void? It is used to inject the dependent object into target object. There are several modes available. What are the several modes? By name, by type, constructor. By name means name of the variable should match with the bean name. By type means data type of the variable should match with the bean class. So when we go for by type, there is a chance of getting ambiguity. How to resolve it? Primary or qualifier. When to go for qualifier? Based on the matching bean name, if you want to identify the dependent, we will go for qualifier. What is it depends on? If one class object is dependent on the another class, then we can specify by using depends on. Indirectly, if one class is dependent on the another class, then we will go for depends on annotation. Good. From Monday, we are going to start with data JPA. Spring Boot, that means Spring Boot concepts we understood. What is boot and how to create the boot application, advantages of the boot application, and annotations also we understand. In the data JPA, we are going to create the boot application. In the boot application, we are going to use the data JPA. We will create the boot application. In that, we will use WebMVC. We'll create the boot application. In that, we will develop the REST API. We'll create the boot application. We'll make it as a microservice application. Boot is not completed. Boot is till end of the course. Boot concepts will be available. So from Monday, I'm going to start with data JPA. So in the Monday evening class, data JPA will be available. So from Monday, attendance will be available daily. If you miss morning Hibernate class, we will not allow for JRTP and Spring Boot also. If you miss one class in the morning, that day it is a leave for you. Backup video will be uploaded only on Sunday for offline people. I should be strict. Otherwise, you people will not take it seriously. After course completion, that will become problem for me. Because you will not get the job when you are not attending the classes, then you will blame me. After attending the Ashok Sir course also, we are not getting the job. I don't want to take that negative feedback. Monday morning, if you miss the Hibernate, that day you will miss all the classes. We don't allow you. I have taken a separate admin only for this attendance. I have taken one administrator only for the attendance. He will take your attendance daily morning. If Hibernate class attendance is there, then only you will be come for JRTP. Online people, daily Zoom report will be available. How many people attended the class? Everyday Zoom report we will download. After the course completion, you will come and ask me, sir, where is my job? I will see your attendance. Then I will reply based on your attendance. Whether I am responsible for your job or I am not responsible for your job, I will give you that reply. That is applicable for both online people as well as for offline people also. If you want to get the job, then take it seriously. Otherwise, Aram say you can enjoy, no problem. Right. It is you up to now. So from today video will be uploaded. From Monday video will not be uploaded. Only on Sunday video will be uploaded. If anybody is not interested, come and talk to me in my cabin. I will give you your fees wapas. You can go to other institute, no problem. I'm very serious about it. With your 25,000, 30,000, I will not become Karodpati. So if you are paying the money, you have to be serious. You have to come to the classes. You have to practice. Decide today itself. If backup videos are not available, do you want to continue the course or do you want to take your fees wapas? I am okay for that. If everybody asks the wapas, no problem. No problem. I can give it. Because with your fees, I am not going to become Karodpati, as I told you already. Seriously, come to the class, attend the class, listen, practice. Then only you will get the subject. Then only you can attend the interview. Otherwise, there is no use. Otherwise, there is no use. Clear, guys? Online people, they are not able to see my face. They are not able to feel the reaction what I am giving in the class. Maybe they require the backup videos because they want to go through once again. I'm sitting in front of you. I'm explaining everything. You are understanding. You can ask the direct questions to me. Then why you want backup video? What is the use of that? Because of that backup video, for 300 people strength became 40 in the hibernate class. Do you think that hibernate is not required? Without hibernate, will you understand the internals of JPA? Then why are you not attending? If the same process continue, after 1 month, the Spring Boot class also will come to 50, 60. JRTP class also will come to 50, 60. Because you are day by day, you are becoming lazy. It's been 1 month. From Monday, attendance will be available. No backup videos. You have to come to the live class. If you miss morning class, morning, any one class, evening class also absent for you. Administrator will sit here only. He will check everybody attendance. Then only he will allow. If anybody not interested to continue, come and talk to me. We'll take the next action. You can go to other institute. There is no problem. Fine. So tomorrow no classes. Prepare for your exam on the Monday. Monday exam will be available in the morning. Right. We'll see you on Monday.